Hi everyone, welcome to our first webinar in our Google Apps series presented by the EdTech faculty at Canisius College. My name is Lauren Kisak. I'm the Assistant Director of Graduate Admissions. Should you have any questions during the webinar, feel free to use the question box and we'll respond to those questions, and if there are any that should be presented to everyone, we'll interrupt and tell Rob that there are some questions. So I'll turn it over to Rob to begin for our first Google Apps webinar series.
Hi everybody, my name is Rob Zdrojewski and I am a middle school technology teacher at Amherst Middle School for 14 years now. I teach 7th and 8th grade information communication tech, and now I also work with Canisius College in the Education Technologies and Emerging Media program. So that's a little bit about my background. What you're looking at on screen now is my teacher blog. This is a place where I put a lot of presentations that I've done, including this one. I'll have it posted as a video you can watch afterwards as well. And I just want to take you, everybody that's here today with us, go to this site directly in another tab so that you can use the links that I'm going to use as well. So if you haven't done so already, go over to robztraining.com and you're going to look for this first blog post, and we're looking for the green document right there. You can click on that. That is a Google Doc. That is what I'm going to use for my outline today. So a lot of the links that you'll find, it's kind of like I've taken the notes for you for the session, so you don't have to be writing stuff down as you sit back and watch and maybe even try out some stuff with Google Forms. Okay, so clicking on that brings you to this document right there. So if you are here, you know that the topic of today we're going to talk about is Google Forms. It's a great tool that you can use to go paperless as much as possible, especially in those instances where you need to collect a lot of data from a lot of people at many different times. So I'm going to actually go through show you kind of the finished product first, kind of like a cooking show where I'll show you the end result, and then we'll backtrack and show you how I got to that point and all the different options along the way. So some housekeeping items to start out first. My presentation outline. I have links here to the Canisius EdTech program where you can learn more about the anything from a 4-course sequence to get an advanced certificate, all the way through a full master's program with or without New York State certification. So there's a bunch of options there. You can take a look if you're interested in our program. A lot of times people say, well, what are the kinds of things you create as a student at Canisius in the EdTech program? We started our own student showcase blog, which is canisiusedtech.org. And I'd just like to show you what this looks like. A lot of the final projects that students put a lot of effort into, we like to showcase that work by putting it up on the blog. And a lot of times it happens to be in video format. So you can watch from their point of view, all the different tools that they've been using. And there is a lot, everything from Chromebooks and iPads and learning management platforms and gamification. There's really a lot of good things to look at here. So if you get a chance, take a look at canisiusedtech.org. We also have, to mention in the beginning here, the Summer Google Summit, June 30th through July 1st this year. It's the first annual in Buffalo. It's a pretty big event. People from Google are coming in, and they're going to run a workshop with all sorts of different tools, including the one I'm talking about today, Google Forms, but all sorts of different tools that many people in their schools are already able to use as part of Google Apps for Education. There will be certificates of attendance for today's webinar if you're watching live, made available to you through email, and that will be communicated through email after the fact. And lastly, a little bit of plug for my own teacher webpage, which you saw. Subscribe to my teacher blog at robztraining.com. Upper right hand side, you have the place to drop in your email address. So whenever I post things like this recording, you'll be notified of that new content. All right, so back to the outline here. So the scenario that I'm going to present to you today, since I want this to be very real to as many people as possible. Let's say we're going to use Google Forms to collect data about student progress. And I, in fact, picked this topic because last week, that's what I was doing. Our guidance counselors had emailed to us they need updates for the annual reviews coming up for students. And the old-fashioned way was they would literally submit pieces of paper that we then would have to handwrite, fill out, and submit back in. And then they would have to take all of their data and chew through it. And it's really a lot of data that's collected from a lot of different teachers. So one thing that I really like about Google Forms is that it makes your results page very easy to sort. You could say, show me only the results from 6th grade teachers, or show me only the results that came in before last Wednesday, or something like that. You can really narrow down your results quite nicely. So now that you know about that, let's look at a sample form, which I have hyperlinked here. And so I've made this one. I'm going to say in less than 10 minutes. I'll say maybe 7 or 8 minutes it took to create this. You see I have the most common elements that you would have in a form. I didn't really put in any graphics or videos, which are capable. So there's a lot of bells and whistles here you could use, and for simplicity's sake I kept it very straightforward. We put in your first name, last name, asking for an email address. And notice when I just jumped to the next one, it turned red. That's because it's a required question. Whenever you have the asterisk symbol, it means people are not going to be allowed to leave them blank. They have to fill in those cells. And that can be helpful at times because you want to make sure, in this case, that someone puts their name in. Email address is the next field. I have that one configured so that you do have to put in a valid email address. That means it's actually looking for the @ symbol and the .com or .edu or .org. It's looking for that. So if someone was to mistype their email address, they would not be able to submit it. So there's kind of some safety guards put in place to make sure that the data received is accurate data. Now this next question I put down is, which department do you represent? I did have the option here at first of having these all show up. This is a list of 7 or 8 different things, but that takes up more space. I kind of like the compactness of it by having that be a drop down, and I'll show you when I build this question later how I was able to do that by having a nice drop down list. This is a big box here that you can type in. You actually notice you can drag, I think you can, yeah, you can drag it bigger or smaller if you need to. The default size it comes to is a paragraph text, as they call it. And this is where, in my case, I'm asking for the current level of achievement. Teachers might be typing in, the student currently has an 87 average, or they might be putting in many sentences at a time. This is a great open-ended field, I should say, where you can put in all that information. And then I did want to put in a multiple choice question with multiple options. The reason why, as you'll see later, is, and this is kind of technical, but what if there was only one person that could sign up for 8 a.m. and then another teacher takes this form right after me? You actually can make it so that the choice disappears. So it ends up being first come, first serve. Whoever grabs the time slot, the next person that fills out the form, they don't see that choice anymore. It actually makes choices go away as people take it. So there are some add-on features to Google Forms, optional add-ons, that I will cover later on today as well. So now that you've seen that, let's go ahead and fill it out just so we have results here. Let's say my name is Sue Smith. Let's say I am smith@yahoo.com. And again, I'm just making this up. Let me show you what happens if I leave out the @ symbol and move on. It tells you must be a valid email address. So that is a nice feature for data integrity that I like that they've built in. Let's say I'm from the music department, and I'll put in average is 78%, needs to do homework more often. So just some general notes. That's the kind of stuff that teachers typically will be giving as feedback for students. It doesn't have to be nicely formatted. It could just be kind of a notation format. And let's say I want to take the 10 a.m. time slot. So hit submit. Upon finishing it, you do get to customize what this says. In some cases, you do want to have further actions, a call to action there. It might say, thank you for filling out the form. Now remember to go to the main office and fill out the sheet near the sign out table. Something like that. You can customize it so if you do have needs to, you can put it there. In fact, you can also allow the submitters to view the responses from other people. In our case at school, we've done that so that after I submit it, I can now see what the other teachers are saying about John Smith, the student, and that's kind of a point of reference. I might look at that and say, wow, I didn't realize he was struggling in other classes. And I did have that experience, both positive and negative, with student results this past week when we were filling these out. So that is an option you can have. It depends on if the data is sensitive or not to allow people to see what others have submitted. So I'm going to close that now, and I'm going to show you where the results went when I put that information in. So this is the form that I'm editing. If we want to see the responses, we go up under View Responses. And it's going to open up in a new tab. And you may recognize, those of you that understand what we're seeing here, this is a spreadsheet, except this is a Google spreadsheet, so it's stored in the cloud. I don't have to worry about carrying a flash drive around or a portable hard drive, or even this computer that I'm on. I could be on any computer or any mobile device and have access to it. Now I need to unfilter the results so I can show you. Today we've had a bunch of people submit information. You can see there's all of their names. We have the departments and their email addresses, but look at this. Isn't it interesting that a lot of people want the 10 a.m. time slot? So I'm going to show you that. I'm a little foreshadowing here, how to make sure that that doesn't happen, because maybe only one teacher at a time could sign up for a time slot, not four in this case here. All right, so that is the results spreadsheet. I'm going to close that, and I'll close our form. And let me make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay, so now I'm going to go through the workflow here and show you the steps to create the form that you just saw. So starting in my Google Drive account. All right, I'm going to begin. This is Google Drive. Drive.google.com is the most direct way to get into it. The place that I would say that you're going to go first is on the left-hand side under New. And notice it doesn't show up. This is a relatively new thing with Google. It shows up under the More area. I've had students and teachers come to me and say they took it away. It's not gone, it's there, it's just under the More area. So we go to Google Forms. It's a green looking icon. And it will come up with a untitled form as the topic. I always recommend to my students and teachers to click right on that and change it right now. Let's say this is going to be my Jim Jones IST update. So give it a name right off the bat. You don't want to have a lot of documents in your Google Drive that just say untitled. It makes it very difficult later to find things. So let's take it now from left to right in the toolbar. We have the obvious undo and the redo, like you'll see across any word processing program. We then have edit questions. Notice it's currently selected. That's the mode that we are now in. If I wanted to change the theme, it goes from the default looking bluish theme, that must be the last one that I used, to another theme here that you can see there are a lot of options. So I'll just pick something at random. What if you say, you know what, I kind of like this, but I'm not really too happy about this image up top. Relatively recently, this wasn't always the case, Google now allows you to customize a specific template. Maybe you want to customize that header image. I want to change that image instead of that grayish looking circles. I'll go to the Just Kids category, and interestingly enough, these are actually moving. I don't know if you can see the balloons are moving. I don't think it ends up putting it in there. Let's find out. I tried this earlier and it was not making it motion. Yeah, it just stays nice and still. But that's this process of grabbing something that's already there. Or if you can see here, you can upload things or grab some images from your Google Drive. So you do have some options if you want to really customize it. Maybe put the school's logo up top or a picture of the school building or something of that case if you're making it for that. You do have other options to change as well, including colors and fonts and you name it. They've really made it nice that you can customize a form to look very unique to fit your needs and not just be a plain old theme that everybody else happens to be using. So that's what it means by change in theme. Let's say I'm happy with that. I can go back to edit questions. Now this next area, view responses, is where I clicked earlier to see the spreadsheet that automatically gets created, and they put the word responses in it also, just so you know. And this is where all the data will be dumped into. Now as I add questions, they're going to be populating across the top here, across row 1. So I only have one untitled question right now, but that will change dynamically as I start adding questions. And then this one, View Live Form, this is the actual link. Notice it opened in a new tab that gives me the link to this, how it exists so far. This is the form itself. So this big long link up the top here, that is going to be the link. However, Google gives you an ability to shorten that up, because imagine if you asked someone to type that in by hand, that would take them probably a half hour to type that in. So they do give you the ability to have shortcut links as well. All right, so I've showed you the top navigation. Now let's go to this area, the form settings. And if you do not see it, it might be like this. You can expand it by dropping down. So show progress bar at the bottom of form pages. That is helpful when you have very lengthy surveys or forms. It shows someone the percent that they've reached across the bottom. Now I'm not going to make a long one today, so I'll just leave it empty. Only allow one response per person. That does require a login. That's a way to ensure that you're not getting duplicates from people. And then shuffle question order. That would be good if you're making, say, a quiz or a test and using this tool for that purpose. It may shuffle around the answer choices, which might be helpful from a security standpoint. Now, those of you that are using a Google Apps account from your school, you're probably going to see more options here, because if you're tied into a domain, like I am at Amherst Middle School, I'll have options that say share with Amherst Middle School students, or some other options here that have to do with being inside of a domain. Right now I'm using my plain old Google account, which is not tied to any school, so that's why I do not see as many choices there. All right, so here we have the title of our form. If you want to give a description, you could say, please complete this before Thursday 4/23, or whatever the case may be. Now you're off to your first question. Now, types of questions. You always have question 1 put in here like this for you. So don't be alarmed if you're wondering, how do I add my first question? It's always ready to go for you to add that. The question types. Notice you have a variety of different types. Real quickly, this is a short text and a long text. Multiple choice, it means you can only pick one. Checkboxes means it's ability to choose more than one thing. So these two are related, but this one is a little bit more advantageous. Choose from a list would be a drop-down list like you saw me show you earlier. And then these last ones are very specific. Scale has to do with, like let's say rate something on a scale of 1 to 10. The person gets a choice across a linear scale that they can choose. Grid is a little bit more complex, and date and time only allow someone to enter a specific date and a specific time. So the first couple ones I'm going to do here, let me make sure I do this the same way. We're going to go with first name, last name for our first question. And I like to say your first and last name. Help text is optional. You don't have to put it in. And I'll leave this one, I got to change it now, to text. I want a short answer like this. You could put it as paragraph text, but I always figure, why make a big box like this when you don't need it? Really, all you need is a small little box for someone's name. Now notice you have some advanced settings. You could do some what they call data validation. You could say there should only be numbers typed in this box, or there should only be text typed in this box. And you could even say that text must contain or should not contain certain information. So notice they've really made it very advantageous here to limit the types of things people could type in or require what they have to type in. For now, I'm just going to leave that empty and close that off. And now you have the option of making it required or not required. I do want to make sure I always get someone's name in there, so I don't want to leave that one unchecked. So I'll hit done, and you'll see it puts it in like so. Now at this point, people say, well, let me see what it looks like. That's nice about Google Forms is you can look at any time. You don't have to wait until you're all done to see what it looks like. So we'll click on View Live Form, and here it is what it looks like with our first field ready to go. All right, I'll close back, and it's time to add the next thing. Here's the thing. If I click on this, it creates a new question, defaults to multiple choice. Let me delete that. What I always recommend people do is click on this instead, the drop-down arrow, which now gives you a choice of what kind of question do you want. Not a big deal if you make the wrong thing. Let's say I pick checkboxes and I say, oops, I really want it to have paragraph text. You can change it easily enough at any time. All right, so my next question I asked was about the email address. So here's how I did that. I made it a text-based. I said, your email address. And then I did use the advanced settings here. I said data validation, I want it to be text, and it must contain an email address. So it's going to force them to make sure that they type in a correct email formatted address. Let's say it is required, we need it, we'll check it, and it's in. Next one I had was this one, the drop-down list. And in fact, what I'm going to do now is, instead of going back and forth here, since I'm building the same thing essentially, I'm just going to come here to the one that's finished already, and in the interest of saving time. So what department you represent, notice I have all these departments listed. There's actually 10 of them listed in here. What I prefer is choose from a list. It makes it nice and compact, but you could leave it as multiple choice. And if you do that, it looks like you lose your choices. So just be aware of that. If you switch your type and you had them in, I don't think I can undo it, or can I? Let's see. There it is. Yep. Luckily, Google saved me. I can hit undo and always go back in time. So here's my choose from a list. And let's say it is required. Make it done. And now it's listed in a nice little drop-down format. This box here, I made this question. Let's go to edit. I made that question as a paragraph text, okay, because text is short, paragraph text is longer, and that one's all set. And then choose a conference time slot. We did this as a multiple choice, so you are only allowed to pick one. Keep in mind, I've seen my students do this. If they do this one here instead, checkboxes, that means people are allowed to pick one or possibly more than one, and that could be a problem if you want to narrow down the choices to only one specific one. So that's the difference between the circles. Circles means one. Sometimes they call them radio buttons, or checkboxes means you may select multiple. All right, so I'm going to say done on that, and we've reached the bottom now. I'm going to stop adding questions, and at the bottom, this is where you put in your confirmation page. I have thanks for your feedback. It defaults to saying something else. I think like thanks for your response. You can customize whatever you'd like it to say there. And notice you can give people the ability to show a link to submit another response. In other words, if you have to fill out another one and another one and another one, it's nice to have a link there. You can just click on it and start it over again. Publish and show a public link to form results. That can be iffy. You got to be careful. If it's sensitive information, you don't want everyone to see it. And then this is an interesting one. Allow respondents to edit their responses after submitting. Somehow Google will allow you to, I'm not sure if it remembers your computer address, but it lets you go back and change your responses afterwards. Now, when you get to the bottom, it says send form. You don't actually have to send it directly through email. I always prefer to, let me close this. I prefer to always just go to View Live Form, and here's the finished product. And I'll just grab this link right here, copy it, and then I'll go off and compose an email message to somebody. All right, for example here, and then I'll just paste it in as, here is the form to complete, and then paste in the link. And by doing that, it ends up being a link that someone can fill out from their email. But you could use the send form feature to send them through your connected email address. There's also the ability to check the box. Notice it gives you a nice short link. This is more manageable, I guess, if someone reads this on paper and they have to type it in with their keyboard. That one's not going to take you as long to type in as compared to the real long one that you see up top. So that's what you could do to send it, to get it to people. And those would be your options. All right, back to here. So we just demonstrated the workflow. We showed you the steps to create the new form. Now let's look at some of the optional add-ons, optional features that make your form even more capable. First, we'll look at the form limiter. And the purpose here is to shut off a Google form after a maximum number of responses have come in, or at a certain time, or when a certain spreadsheet cell equals a value. I'll show you what that means. So form limiter here, we're going to go back to here. And this is found under the add-ons area. And you're going to go to Get Add-ons. It brings this up. Some of you might see this familiar if you've done this with Google Docs or Google Sheets or presentations. These are third-party features that you can add on. So in other words, these were not necessarily developed by Google. They're developed by other people that usually offer them for free, and it makes your Google Docs more accessible. So the one that I just talked about, I believe was, let me think here, it was form limiter is the first one we're going to do. So let's find out where they've put it now. And that is right here, form limiter. So I will click on it and manage. Usually it says add. Let's see here. Maybe I have it in already. That could be it here. Add-ons. If I refresh it. I did this earlier, so that might be the problem. Oh, there it is. Okay, form limiter. So because I've added it already, it's listed here. I go to set limit. And on the right-hand side is going to be your options now. And here's what we get to pick from. We can select the date and time. So I can say stop accepting form responses on, let's say, tomorrow. And I want to do that at the end of the school day. So maybe we say at 4 o'clock p.m. Set. And now when someone tries to access it after 4 p.m., they get this special message right here that you can customize. And even further, email the form owner, which is me, when submissions are closed. So tomorrow at 4 p.m., I would get an email that says your form has now been closed. And that's good as like a little heads up reminder that you closed off a form. So I would hit save and enable if I did want to keep this. All right, I'm going to switch back now and go to another option, maximum number of form responses. I could say after, let's say, 12 people fill out this form, I want to shut it off so nobody else can fill it out. Same option here before. Or this one's a little bit more technical. Because the results go into a spreadsheet, you could say when a certain cell, let's say the names cell, equals, I don't know, let's say 5 responses, it's going to be turning it off. I haven't used that feature yet. I still haven't found a way specifically that I would need to do so. But just so you know, it is an option that does exist. All right, so the next one we're looking at is form notifications. And this add-on allows you to receive and send emails. Let's see here. Let's see if I got that right. Let me switch over and make sure I got the right one. Form notifications. All right, so add-ons. Get add-ons, and we want form notifications. Now those that have been using Google Forms for a while might remember this was a built-in feature. Google then removed it and now it's back again. So if we add it, I'll show you what it does. It's going to, and by the way, when you add stuff, Google now presents to you, these are the things that that third-party tool can do with your form notifications. It's not meant to make you nervous, but just to be transparent and show you what it's able to do. For example, send email as you without you actively doing so. You have to hit accept. It's the only choice you have in order for it to work. And now, notice it gives me a little pop-up window that says, take a look, something new is here, and that would be form notifications. So I'll go to configure. Again, on the right-hand side, you get a nice little area that says notify me. That would be me, the form creator here. The default is 10, after 10 people fill it out, but let's say I want to know when every person fills it out, I can change it to 1. Or if I'm expecting hundreds of people to fill this out, let's say after every 200 come in. So you have the ability, of course, to change that up or down. The other option is notify the person that filled it out, the respondent. And that's why you have to ask for their email address. So it says which question asks for their email. That's why I put this in here. I knew that I was doing this later on, so I definitely asked a question that said that, and I say that's the field that has that information. The subject of the email message would say this, and then the body of it says that. Thank you for responding to our form. In some cases, I have a colleague that's doing this for signups for a course he's teaching. He put in here, it says, thanks for filling out the form. Now, please go to my webpage to submit your payment to make your registration complete. So something like that might be advantageous to send out emails automatically after a person fills out a form. So I'll close out of that, and I'll show you the last one that I have here as our optional add-ons is the choice limiter. Now, choice limiter will eliminate options from a multiple choice list or checkbox questions. So let's add that, choice limiter. Go here again to add-ons, get add-ons, and we want the choice limiter. What's weird is these change all the time, so you're not always going to find them in the same spot. There it is, choice eliminator. So I'll add it on. It will install it. It'll ask me for permission first to have access to my Google Drive contents. And then I should get a little pop-up. There it is. And it tells me go ahead and take a look. For choice eliminator, we're going to start it. And now the options here say, let's see, I have to pick which ones I need here. All right, so which list do I want? I'm going to do this one, the conference time slot. We're going to eliminate choices. And so anytime someone picks one of these options, it immediately goes away for the next person that takes it. So eventually, these will all be gone. So it is nice for that first come, first serve basis. Let's say also I want to make sure that maybe 2 math teachers or 2 music teachers do not sign up at the same time. I'm going to limit this and say eliminate choices. So in our list of departments, that way we prevent the situation where multiple teachers from the same discipline area are signing up for something. So that's what Choice Eliminator is all about. It's great. I've tried all 3 of those so far, and I've found increasing ways to use them. Even if it's creating a test for kids to take, or a practice test, or collecting data, or getting approvals for project topics. That's another good one to use it for. So Google Forms has been a really good tool for that. All right, so I'm going to wrap it up here and just give a little shout out for the EdTech Team Buffalo Summit coming up, featuring Google Tools for Education on June 30th through July 1st, and it's being held this year in the Buffalo area, specifically Clarence Middle School. So for more information on that, there is a link there that takes you to it. And I'll take it to you now, Lauren, if you have any questions about that were submitted that we can go for.
I have one question.
Okay.
What do you, in your experience, is, I guess, the best way that you have used this in your classroom?
The best way I've used it in my classroom is for at the beginning of a project when a lot of students have to pick their topics. I do a lot of video projects on the iPads. I have this as a way to collect that data for approvals. So they'll say, for example, I have 3 possible topics. One is Word of the Week, one is a Caring Message project, and another is a Life at Amherst Middle. And so I know then, by looking at the spreadsheet of results, how many people are doing this category and how many are doing that category, and it helps me then to make sure that we are evenly split. So for me, it's usually at the beginning of a unit just to obtain data. Even at the beginning of the school year too, I want to know, for example, how many of them own cell phones, how many have access to the internet at home, getting that kind of data. I used to do that on a paper-based form, but then of course I'd have to look through 200 sheets of paper and kind of add things up manually. Now it does it all automatically for you. And what I haven't shown, which I'm not sure if I can quantify things here, if I look at the responses, I want to show you a nice way again to filter things down, because I did talk earlier about, like, let's say all these people signed up for 10 a.m. Imagine this list though had maybe 200 entries on it. It'd be real difficult to go down and look for all the 10 a.m. ones. But what you can do when you're in a Google spreadsheet is click on the filter button, and now it gives me the ability to filter. Let's say I don't want to see 8 or noon. I want to see only 10 a.m. results, and it narrows it down that way. So you can filter by any one of these areas. I can say not only 10 a.m., I'm sorry, not only 10 a.m., but I also want to see only the social studies teachers. Now I can go like this and say only show me the social studies teachers, and it narrows it down even further. There used to be the ability here to show summary of responses. So you can look at it from the spreadsheet point of view, but you could also look at it from this point of view where they show you the responses. And what's nice is Google will create these nice charts for you, and so you can analyze things that way. In this case, I can see, oh, it looks like 10 o'clock a.m. was the popular choice by many people. So you get the graph, you get the percentages, and you get the quantity numbers too. So that's another view to look at, and I've used that to analyze data as well.
Okay, I've got another question here. How have your students responded to using this, and have you had any feedback from them?
Students really like the fact that it doesn't take them a long time to fill out information. Instead of giving them a paper-based form that they might have to take 15 minutes to do, now they can submit answers to me in a matter of minutes. It's good for quick exit out the door type of activities too. I use Edmodo as well, so I tend to gravitate more towards that tool. But Google Forms is a great way to collect data on the way out too. And because I allow my students to use their cell phones in class, Google Forms does create a mobile-friendly version of every form that you create. So it's easy for them to scroll through and do drop-down lists and multiple choice checkboxes very nicely on a mobile device as well. So I'd say it was received very positively by students, and I should say by teachers too. In a professional development setting, typically at the end when you have to fill out the feedback of how things went, people are usually concerned, well, they might detect my handwriting and know who this is submitting it. So we have used Google Forms as a way to collect data anonymously, which tends to get better results, and people are more open about the kinds of responses that they are saying. So you can choose to make your forms anonymous or make it so it automatically collects the person's email address if they are tied in with your school, with a school-based account.
Okay, one more question. From the data that you do receive, do you ever use that to speak with parents or provide that information to parents?
I do. I know in the beginning of September when I collect that data from the students and I find out about their social media use especially, I tie that in then a couple weeks later down the road when we have open house night, which is usually at the end of September. So I will say, according to the forms I had your students fill out, like 86% of them use social media. And I asked the parents right off the bat, how many of you think your child uses social media? And you don't see 86% raising their hands. It's a lot less. So data like that is helpful then to have numbers very easily quantified, to be able to share that out with parents and help in the educational process.
That sounds great. So I don't see any other questions here. If you do have questions after the presentation's over and you think of something, you can always send us an email. Our email address is gradadm@canisius.edu. We can answer any questions that you will have, and we will be sending you your certificate for the completion of this webinar. So look for that in your email as well. I'd like to thank Rob for presenting this for us today. And next week we'll have our next Google Apps session as well. So be sure to check your email for that as well. And thank you so much for attending.
Thank you.